Oh, hey, I'm Kurt. And you know what? It's that time of year. The time in which we get to talk about all the great games. Sure, there was a lot of layoffs, but still, a lot of great games. Come on. This is a time where we get to look back on all the great games that came out this year, but also look towards the future, like a new GameSpot office. Oh, hey, wait. This is the GameSpot office, right?
I think you're a little early, dude.
That's fine. We don't need some new fancy office or big stage to commemorate why these games were so good this year. We have wherever this is. Anyways, here is GameSpot's top 10, according to this sweet ragtag team of cool cats. Me included. All right, without further ado, first up. Two minutes is all it takes for Astro Bot to sink its adorable platforming hooks into you, as Team Asobi's delightful adventure hits the ground running as perhaps Sony's best game of the year. Effortlessly charming, Astro Bot knows exactly what type of game it wants to be, pulling out all the stops to deliver a best-in-class experience that feels like a breath of fresh air. Astro Bot isn't just an inviting platformer, but also an imaginative one that takes the best ideas of its genre and modernizes the experience. Team Asobi might be inspired by the past, but it also looks to the future with levels that combine tightly constructed gauntlets of danger with creative flourishes that add to the joy of Astro Bot. Maybe you're stopping time so that you can hop over a flurry of oversized playing cards that have been hurled at you. Or maybe you're bulldozing your way through the teeth of a giant ape thanks to the Robo-Pooch jetpack strap to Astro's back. The point is, just when you think you've seen everything that Astro Bot has to offer, it surprises and delights you with a new gameplay wrinkle. It's that effort to consistently astonish that makes the game feel so special, restoring a sense of wonder to even the most jaded of gamers who think they've seen everything. In an age of play-it-safe sequels and overly ambitious live service games, Astro Bot feels just right. It's a short and sweet blast of fun that works as a quick lunchtime diversion or for a night of collectathon entertainment. Not only does it look incredible in action, but Team Asobi proves that it's in a league of its own when it comes to squeezing out the best haptic feedback features from the DualSense controller and making them feel like a natural part of the game. All of those positives already make for a Game of the Year contender, but then you throw in all the nods and Easter eggs to 30 years of PlayStation, a celebration of its past, present, and future as viewed through the lens of Astro and his hundreds of pals. It's an adorable and touching tribute to the games that helped establish Sony as a major player in the gaming space, delivered through secrets, themed stages, and an incredible final level that'll put a smile on your face. This next game is a little twist on poker, and it's called Balatro. Of our top 10 games of the year, Balatro is perhaps the most distinct and original of the bunch. Roguelikes have been all the rage for years, with many of them taking the form of either action games like Dead Cells and Hades, or turn-based tactics games like Faster Than Light. There have been wonderful card-based roguelikes too, but Balatro found a unique spin on the format, blending it with poker to create something that stands out in a crowded genre. Adapting to the randomized tools put in front of you is often the name of the game in a roguelike, but Balatro's approach to this is particularly brilliant. Your strategy will revolve around maximizing the jokers you acquire, each of which can offer radically different effects that can force you to thoroughly rethink poker hands, like allowing straights or flushes to be made with 4 cards instead of 5, or providing a bonus that triggers every 6th hand you play. Alongside these, there are numerous other types of cards that provide various bonuses, but it's a testament to the game's design that it never becomes overwhelming to track. All of these factors will change how you approach a given hand, but it's the interplay between jokers, the passive bonus you get from your chosen deck, and the way you build your deck, changing the suit or rank of individual cards, adding or discarding new ones, and so on. That provides a satisfying, wide-open array of possibilities that makes each run feel different. And that sense of satisfaction can be deep, particularly when you piece together a setup that feels so overpowered that it's broken. That feeling is amplified by the way that your score and multiplier catch on fire when playing a particularly high-scoring hand, hammering home just how laughable the round's goal has been rendered by what you just pulled off. Not every run will go that way, of course, but the allure of seeking out and utilizing those game-breaking combos makes it a hard game to put down. Understanding poker isn't a prerequisite for playing, but even when you think you have a firm grasp of Balatro, it keeps throwing new decks, jokers, and combinations of elements to keep each round feeling fresh. In a year full of so many stellar refinements of well-trod territory, Balatro is a breath of fresh air that will keep you coming back again and again.
Elden Ring.
Though more Elden Ring is always a good thing, you'd be remiss to call Shadows of the Erdtree simply more of the same. The expansion is a masterpiece, adding not only dozens of hours to 2022's Game of the Year, but elevating the entire Elden Ring experience while creating a world and story that is fascinating on its own. With the addition of new weapons and items, bosses and locations that subvert expectations, and a somber story that presents both villains and saints in a new light, Erdtree is an essential addition to a genre-defining game. One of Erdtree's most impressive feats is how it seamlessly embeds itself within the game's core. However, this doesn't mean it simply injects a few hours into the game's second act. The Land of the Shadow is an unforgiving terrain that challenges even seasoned players. And yet, by adding a new leveling system, From Software doesn't relegate this chapter to merely being endgame material. What you then get is an experience that can either hone your skills for the rest of the game or test your might, as battles and even traversal require more observation, strategy, and foresight than ever before. New spells, weapons, and the inclusion of hand-to-hand combat encourage players to experiment more than before. Furthermore, all of these carry over to the lands between, giving the base game a refresh by virtue of their inclusion. But perhaps the most meaningful addition to the base game is the clarity Erdtree bestows upon its most prominent figures. It is in Shadow of the Erdtree that some of the game's larger-than-life figures are explored in deeply empathetic and humanizing ways. These stories are beautiful, well told, and important in both the Elden Ring universe and fiction as a whole. And yet, Shadow of the Erdtree also stands on its own, providing a strong story, a frankly staggering amount of battles, and locations that are somehow even more awe-inspiring than those in the base game. It's hard to believe this massive world is merely DLC.
I'm doing my part.
Everyone fights, no one quits.
Would you like to know more?
Nuke 'em, Rico!
Helldivers 2.
Helldivers 2 is likely a game you know a lot about, even if you haven't played it since it debuted early in 2024. That's because the co-op PvE third-person shooter is a perpetual parade of comedic accidents and action all at once, making it a special, viral video machine. Adapting nearly whole cloth the satirical tone of Starship Troopers, Helldivers 2 casts players as highly disposable troopers who are sent to the front lines of a multi-front war against monstrous bugs and intelligent machines, only to often die by being crushed under the weight of a friendly care package called in haphazardly amid total chaos. Helldivers 2's comedic voice is ever-present and intentional. Plenty of collectible lore items are written in a darkly humorous way that speaks to how little the people in charge care about the soldiers as individuals. You're there to fulfill their demands, and should your character die, another nameless and hapless soldier will be right behind them. But its best attribute is how it exists as a palette on which you and 3 friends make yourselves laugh every time you drop into hostile territory. Needing to manage friendly fire while being flanked from all angles by enormous acid-spewing beetles should be stressful, and at times it is. But the game does a great job of feeling like emergent moments are happening at all times, be they action-packed or grimly goofy. Whether you're the esteemed war hero who got all your comrades out alive by the skin of their teeth, or the goofball who accidentally deployed a crowded minefield right on your team's extraction zone, the game functions as an excellent shooter that never takes itself too seriously and expects the same of you. As a result, it's an essential hangout game. Arrowhead's move from a top-down POV to an over-the-shoulder perspective helped Helldivers 2 find a vastly bigger audience than the original game. But it's the game's combination of heroism and hilarity that cemented it as one of the best games of 2024.
How did I get here? Where am I? Oh god. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I hate snakes.
On the surface, Machine Games, the lauded developer of the modern Wolfenstein games, was a no-brainer pick for an indie title. It loves to have the player take down Nazis. However, the Great Circle surprises in the ways it's unlike those acclaimed games. In fact, Indiana Jones almost has more in common with the Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay, a game that many of the same developers worked on over 20 years ago. Rather than a relatively linear experience where Dr. Jones tears through fascists on the path to his next objective, Machine Games was seemingly influenced by its sister studio, Arcane, opting for a more immersive Sim-style approach. Having players become intimately familiar with its open locations, skulking from their detailed, historically accurate points of interest on the surface to their fictional but no less meticulously designed underbellies, makes for a unique experience that couldn't be mistaken for a Tomb Raider or Uncharted clone. Layered on top of this open exploration is an improvisational combat system that harkens to the slapstick comedy of the movies, with Indy using his wits and whatever items are on hand to interrupt the actions of his foes. The Great Circle's gameplay might have been enough to get into our best games of the year list, but the cherry on top is Troy Baker's Indy himself.
Adios, pal!
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle isn't just one of the best games of 2024. It raises the bar for what a video game adaptation can be, thoughtfully translating every single aspect of the professor's adventures on screen into moments you can play.
Watch your step, pal!
And our next game, I would love to tell you, but I don't know because it's locked behind this strange puzzle. 1881?
Few games have latched onto my mind the way Simogo's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes did. It is an intricate and carefully crafted puzzle box brimming with mystery, artistry, and wonder. For a solid week, it was all I could think about. It took over my life in a way that only the best games can do. 20 in-game hours later, I had dozens of pages of notes and a new appreciation for what a puzzle game could be. But to simply call Lorelei and the Laser Eyes an excellent puzzle game doesn't quite do it justice. It's a psychological horror game filled with twists and turns to punctuate its brilliant enigmas. Lorelei wears its horror influences on its sleeve and tells a compelling story that could only work in a game like this. After you're invited to an old hotel somewhere in Europe, you're tasked with uncovering the truth about its unlandish owner. For every answer, a new question arises, and it all culminates into one of the most satisfying endings in recent memory that blends your knowledge of the story, its themes, and its puzzles. Almost every puzzle is numbers-based, and nearly all of them use the same 3 sets of numbers. However, the way you manipulate these numbers to solve the game's many mysteries can vary widely. They often require you to reconsider your environment, cross-examine multiple puzzles, and, of course, take lots and lots of notes. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes certainly isn't an easy game. I hit plenty of roadblocks, but the dopamine rush I got every time I worked through one of the game's trickier puzzles was unmatched. This is all held together by a confident art style that often borrows from classic survival horror games to create a sparse and cohesive visual language. It is deeply uncomfortable when it needs to be, but there's a beauty to the simplicity of it all. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes asks a lot of its players, but if you're willing to meet it halfway, you'll find one of the boldest games of 2024. Its brilliant puzzles, tantalizing mystery, and striking visuals make it one of the best games of the year and, potentially, one of the greatest puzzle games of all time. Shortly after Metaphor ReFantazio was announced and its archetype system was briefly explained, it was given a new title by both fans and cynics alike: Fantasy Persona. With a team of Persona veterans at helm and a signature art style on full display, turn-based combat doled out by creatures born of their owners' inner strength and plenty of social sim elements, it's easy to see why it was so quickly regarded as more of the same, even if it did boast a different setting. Once you start Metaphor, however, it doesn't take very long to realize just how different and innovative Atlus's latest venture truly is. Metaphor ReFantazio is an adventure in the truest sense, complete with a memorable party, spectacular set pieces, and plenty of twists and turns that will keep players on the edge of their seats. Within it exists a sense of time, place, movement, progression, and anxiety that is entirely its own, while marked improvements to combat and gameplay showcase the team's focus on elevation rather than emulation. Turn-based combat gets an upgrade thanks to a sleeker UI, more flexibility, and new mechanics that reward exploiting weaknesses and taking the time to truly tailor your party more so than ever before. Even more impressive is how every system, mechanic, and even the game's various stylistic choices mesh together perfectly, making for a seamless and intentional experience. Metaphor is also perhaps the most earnest and compassionate game from its developer, with a focus on injustice, reparations, and compassion, delivered in a way that is neither ham-fisted nor superficial. It is a game that understands how art, fiction, and everything we consume ultimately shapes our world and being. Regardless of if you go into Metaphor longing for top-notch gameplay, a memorable cast of characters, grand adventure, or to replenish your hope, you will find everything you're looking for within its 80-hour journey.
It's incredible!
Have I been here before? Am I backtracking? Am I lost? Prince of Persia, the Lost Crown. Got him.
A breath of fresh air in a genre that sometimes risks growing stale. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown invigorated the popular Metroidvania this year. It's an accomplishment made all the more impressive when you consider that Prince of Persia is not historically a Metroidvania at all. Its long history has been as an intricate puzzle platformer, often with action elements. All of those ingredients are still present here, but by adding the wrinkle of a large, interconnected world to explore, the series unlocks something truly special and revelatory. The Lost Crown distinguishes itself from other Prince of Persia games with a completely new story, starring not the titular prince but rather an elite member of the Royal Guard, called the Immortals. As the newest member of the superheroic bodyguard team, you're caught up in a tale of intrigue as the prince is abducted and taken to a cursed mountain. Exploration is a joy, thanks to an array of agile moves that only expand as you unlock more traversal tools. Combat is similarly nuanced and beautifully complemented by your increased acrobatic abilities. The combination means that making your way through this mountain is a thrilling mixture of tight platforming, fast and reflexive combat, and awe-inspiring exploration. On top of those elements, The Lost Crown innovates in the Metroidvania space with helpful quality-of-life tools. A subtle light trail will lead you toward the nearest save point, so you always know which direction to go when you're in need. An optional guided mode will lead you toward the next objective or let you know if a current gate is closed off with your abilities. And most significantly, the memory shard system gives you an expandable, reusable resource to save screenshots with a single button press, pinning them to your map. In a genre that thrives on going back to areas you visited, this is an absolute game changer. It's a stellar accomplishment, soured by the news that most of the team has been divided into other Ubisoft studios. That makes it less likely that we'll get a sequel, but if Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown stands alone, it's still one of the best Metroidvanias ever made.
Are there any holes? I feel a compulsion to stick my hand in them for no reason. Silent Hill 2.
Remaking an all-time classic horror game is a tall task regardless of the specifics, but it certainly felt like the mission of adequately and respectfully remaking Konami's landmark 2001 psychological horror game Silent Hill 2 would be nearly impossible. Regardless, Bloober Team's inventive reinterpretation of the hugely important game is one of the year's most captivating triumphs. 2024's Silent Hill 2 is a much bigger game than the original, with a typical playthrough taking about twice as long, and yet it rarely feels overstuffed. Instead, the team leans into all of the original's most vital aspects and enhances them, adding little and occasionally big touches to alter the experience without ever fumbling its all-important, oppressive atmosphere. The original Silent Hill 2 benefited, intentionally or not, from technology that pitted the game in a dreamlike haze of blurry visuals and indescribable monsters, while the admittedly janky combat served the story as well as the protagonist. James ought to have felt disadvantaged and endangered anyway. The Silent Hill 2 remake is a much more polished experience, yet it expertly translates these crucial attributes with tremendous care, ensuring this prettier version of the game is still nauseating in its sights and sounds. Its more responsive combat remains harrowing thanks to monsters that prefer to get right up in your face, making just two of them feel like a horde. All of that ultimately ensures its story, an unforgettably dark tale you want to not spoil for yourself, hits extremely hard in the end. Every moment is a fight for survival in a place that doesn't welcome you there, and the only living souls you encounter seem just as lost in the signature fog as you are. Why might that be? Answering that question is what cemented Silent Hill 2 as a classic, and it certainly still holds up today.
This next one is S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, which is extra cool because I wrote it, because I'm a real cool dude.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is an anomaly. And no, I'm not talking about the physics-defying anomalies you'll be tiptoeing around in the game, but an anomaly among all other game experiences I had this year. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is a game about friction. It's a game that put me under an oppressive weight and challenged me to survive in a world that, at times, didn't feel worth surviving in. Like surviving under such conditions, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is, at times, messy, convoluted, and difficult to understand. But all of that is made a little easier to grapple with thanks to the people you meet along the way, undergoing the same confusing struggle that you are. There's just something about having wandered for hours in a desolate world, fending off rabid dogs, grotesque mutants, bands of other humans raiding the land just like you, all while being a little tipsy from the vodka you drank to alleviate radiation poisoning, only to make it back to salvation and have a guy in a gas mask look you in the eyes and say, "Hey man." It slices through the tension like a knife, making its dour world feel a little less dire and a little bit more digestible. Hell, even a little more welcoming.
When a scientist offers you a job, think real hard. Then tell him to eat a real hard dick.
Listening to other stalkers gather around the fire each night to play the guitar, drink copious amounts of vodka, and talk about their daily woes expresses a sense of community amongst these survivors. There's still camaraderie to have, all things considered in a decimated depiction of Ukraine. It's a feeling I imagine reflects that of many real-life Ukrainians every day. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was made under the tragic conditions of a full-fledged war between Russia and Ukraine. Now, these circumstances in which S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 was made has no bearing on its place in our top 10, but I think they provide important context when examining the game, its themes, and how it stands as a cultural touching point. It's a game about surviving by the skin of your teeth, with everything in the zone being a threat, whether it's unexplained anomalies, horrible mutant beasts, or humans themselves. But through it all, its humanity is tangible. It's the smaller moments with characters spread across this vast and radiated land that breathe hope in a world that otherwise feels robbed of optimism. So,
hey man,
that's what makes S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 among the best gaming experiences of 2024.
And there you have it, GameSpot's top 10 for the year 2024. There are a lot of good games this year, so trust me, it was very difficult to figure this out, as it always is, but in the end, it's just to celebrate the thing we both love, games. Where you go, don't leave me here. I have no idea. Can you, well, you have a good holiday. See you next year. Oh God, I don't know. There's just more of this. Can you help?